Welcome back to Faith on Film, where I raid your church library in search of the good stuff. I let Steph sit this one out because I didn't want to put her through hours of this. This time we're looking at the Lumo project. In 2014, they published an adaptation. No, that word feels too strong. They published a recitation? Yes. I'm going with recitation. In 2014, they published a recitation of the Gospel of John, followed by one for Luke, and then one for Matthew. But if you watched the last episode, you're probably wondering, did they manage to get Mark? Yes. Unfortunately, I still don't care. But before we get into that, let's say some kinda nice things. The casting is surprisingly racially accurate. A fellow by the name of Selva Rasalingham plays Jesus. British by nationality, but Sri Lankan Tamil by ethnicity. He may not be Jewish, but he's a lot closer than... Yeah. And that the same goes for the rest of the cast as well. They look believably like occupants of the ancient Near East. For that matter, some of the cinematography looks really pretty. It's not anything innovative or creative, but there's a competence to it. You can tell somebody behind the camera had some degree of training in terms of visual aesthetic. At the very least, it's not amateur or boring. These look like professionally shot films. Unfortunately, that's about the extent of the compliments I can give to these. The biggest and most obvious problem is that they have a single narrator reading the entire book, including everyone's dialogue. I'm not even sure if I could properly call these movies. In way too many instances, Jesus won't even open his mouth when the narrator says that he says something. He'll just look at somebody, the narrator assures us he spoke to them, and then he walks away. Even worse, sometimes whole scenes take place only in the narration while an entirely different scene plays out on screen. Just watch the feast in the home of Matthew the tax collector.
When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick."
Okay, now watch the same scene from the Gospel of Luke.
But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law who belonged to their sect complained to his disciples, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?"
Yeah, those are the exact same footage. No wonder they were able to churn these out one right after the other. Okay. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. There is a reason we call them the Synoptic Gospels. There's significant overlap between the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, down to incredibly specific wording. So, it's not unjustifiable to use the same scenes in common between those three. As long as nothing like that happens with John.
Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?"
Jesus said, "It is finished."
What? No. You don't get to do that. Wait a minute. Show me Jesus' last words from Luke.
Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit."
Are you absolutely kidding me? You couldn't be bothered to film Selva saying all the different sayings on the cross, so you just dubbed him 3 different ways in English. You know how I can absolutely tell? You can hear him saying Eloi, Eloi in all 3 versions. The absolutely asinine part is that the tone is strikingly different between those sentiments. My God, why have you forsaken me? Followed by death, paints Jesus' death as a low point. Into your hands I commit my spirit, and it is finished, both have a note of triumph in them, even if the degree of that triumph is different between the two. Yeah, I'm really feeling mission accomplished from this performance. This is just freaking lazy. And again, what was the point of doing each canonical gospel as its own movie if you're just going to gloss over the ways in which they're different? If you'd wanted to smoosh all 4 of them into one long mega movie, just do that! People have been trying to harmonize the Gospels for centuries. There was an entire cottage industry of doing so in the Middle Ages. Just in case you don't believe me that they won't let the Gospels stand on their own, look what they did to poor John. Right in the middle of John's prologue, we are shown Magi worshiping Jesus in Bethlehem, in a manger. I will remind you, John says exactly none of this. You would never visualize such a scene unless you were reading Matthew and Luke alongside John. But this isn't an isolated incident. John coerces multiple scenes from the synoptics into it, hidden under longer speeches. All while this is obviously not in the text, because we are hearing the text at every moment. If you want to take seriously each gospel as its own text, you need to ask yourself, okay, what is this text saying and how is it saying it? Not, alright, I know this other thing from this other gospel, so I need to account for it while reading this one. It is an utterly confounding situation in which the people who claim to love and honor these texts do them this disservice by forcing aspects of other texts into them. Okay, I probably sound like I'm getting up to a line that a lot of Christians won't like. Let me put it this way. Imagine you're watching the 1991 Beauty and the Beast with your friend. Then they lean over to you and say, and somewhere in here, the Beast magically takes Belle to Paris where they learn her mother died of the plague. Even if you can find a point where that can happen in the narrative without contradicting anything else, the fact remains, your friend is taking information from a different text and forcing it into this one. Obviously, there is such a thing as context in which a text is written. Hey, Steph! Oh. Mark opens by saying, the beginning of the good news about Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God. That good news, by the way, is literally our term gospel. Why am I harping on this? Well, the discovery of the Preen calendar inscription cast this in a new light. That carving says, "The birthday of the god Augustus was the beginning of the good news, aka gospel, for the world that came by reason of him," referring to Caesar Augustus. Yes, the one from the Nativity. This was proof that the term gospel was in use by the imperial cult. Basically, it was used to announce when a new emperor came into power. We also have other records indicating that numerous Roman emperors bore the title Divi Filius, the son of a god, usually referring to the emperor prior to them who had been believed to be fully deified upon their death. This included the likes of Tiberius, who was reigning during the approximate time of Jesus' death, and Nero, who was reigning at the approximate time Mark was written. What I'm getting at is that Mark, from the first sentence, paints Jesus as a rival and indeed a replacement to Caesar, both in terms of religious devotion and in terms of politics. Mark is directly pitting the kingdom of God against the Roman Empire. Pilate crucifies Jesus under a sign calling him the King of the Jews, and upon Jesus' death, a Roman soldier acknowledges him, saying, "Surely this man was the Son of God." The two forces are in competition, and even in Jesus' apparent defeat, he has the deification formula of dead emperors applied to him. But of course, that's not the end of the book. Jesus subverts Rome's apparent victory by resurrecting, and thus those who are part of the kingdom of God need have no fear of the Roman Empire, because they had literally done the worst that they could to this rival Caesar, and it didn't stick. Okay. That is a lot of words I just said. Now let's see how the Lumo project applies this context to how it frames Jesus.
The beginning of the good news about Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God.
How about the soldier at the cross?
And when the centurion, who stood there in front of Jesus, saw how he died, he said, "Surely this man was the Son of God."
Okay. I guess just blandly saying the lines with no sense of their significance in the cultural context. Yeah, it's an option. See, this is why these recitations bother me so much. They think they're so great because they're literally the whole book. Even the stuff we have every reason to believe was added to later manuscripts.
In my name they will drive out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes with their hands, and when they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all.
And that's supposed to automatically make it good. But even that's putting it too mildly. On their website, the Lumo Project claims they are redefining the standard of biblical media. Really? Yeah, sure you're redefining the genre, if you mean you're going back to the days of the Genesis Project. You're seriously just doing the same thing that they already did, except you have the budget to do it 4 times. Look, these are not movies. These are audiobooks with pictures. This kind of thing can be made into a decent film. It just so happens that the only one we have to date is the 2003 Gospel of John, because that was the only one to prioritize quality visual storytelling, basically on par with speaking the text. And if you watch some of the behind-the-scenes materials, you can tell that the people behind the Lumo Project think they're doing the same thing. And I would like to give them credit for trying. But this incredible misuse of the narrator immediately disengages me from paying attention, which is only compounded by the numerous other things I've already talked about. These things are just kind of a mess, and it's a slog trying to get through them. Even the occasional good moment from either the camera work or the cast is not enough to save this whole thing from the rating of don't bother. Thank you for watching Faith on Film. I'm Nathan. Stephanie and I will see you next time. Hopefully we'll actually have some fun.